was buried.
In August 1945, the capacity for mass casualty reached a new threshold. Across 2 Japanese cities, hundreds of thousands of lives were ended in a matter of seconds. The probability of standing near the epicenter of an atomic blast and living is low. The probability of surviving 2 such blasts in 2 different cities within 3 days is a statistical anomaly. On the morning of August 6th, Tsutomu Yamaguchi was a 29-year-old engineer. He was finishing a 3-month business trip in Hiroshima, packing his bags to return home to his wife and infant son. 31,000 feet above him, a B-29 bomber entered the Hiroshima airspace. It carried a single weapon that operated on a scale previously unknown in human conflict. Inside this steel casing, uranium isotopes were designed to collide and split. This mechanism, known as nuclear fission, weaponized the forces that bind the nucleus of an atom together. At 8:15 a.m., the bomb was released. This elemental energy was falling toward the location of one unsuspecting engineer. The detonation released a blinding thermal flash. The temperature at the hypocenter spiked to millions of degrees. A supersonic pressure wave leveled thousands of structures. A pillar of smoke and ash climbed into the stratosphere. Beneath it, a city of 300,000 people was largely reduced to debris. 2 miles from the epicenter, Yamaguchi saw the light. Before the shockwave reached him, he dove into a nearby ditch, clamped his hands over his ears, and covered his eyes. The force of the blast threw him from the ground. The thermal radiation burned the left side of his body. His eardrums ruptured, and the flash left him temporarily unable to see. When his sight returned, he found a landscape of flat, smoldering plains. Most of the landmarks of the city had been pulverized into ash. Burned and deafened, Yamaguchi walked through the ruins toward the train station. He was moving toward the only destination left to him, his home in Nagasaki. He boarded a relief train. He escaped the city, carrying the physical injuries of the first atomic detonation in human history. August 9, Nagasaki. Yamaguchi was heavily bandaged. His burns were severe. Yet he reported to his engineering office for his scheduled shift. He stood before his supervisor, trying to describe the devastation in Hiroshima. His boss dismissed the story. He insisted it was impossible for a single bomb to destroy a whole city. As they spoke, a second aircraft approached Nagasaki. It carried a plutonium bomb. This device used a more complex implosion core. High explosives were timed to compress a solid sphere of plutonium, triggering a larger yield than the Hiroshima device. At 11:02 a.m., the blinding light flooded the office. For the second time in 3 days, Yamaguchi was at ground zero. Topography determined his survival. The central marker indicates the blast hypocenter in the Urakami Valley. The mountains acted as a physical barrier. The shockwave struck the hills and the reinforced concrete of his office. These materials absorbed the impact, shielding Yamaguchi while others were vaporized. He was buried under the remains of his office. His survival was the result of geography and the structural integrity of the building he was standing in. The blasts were over, but the radiation remained. The fallout contaminated the environment, leading to years of sickness for survivors and their children. Despite his injuries and the loss of his son to cancer years later, Yamaguchi lived a full life. He spent 60 years raising his family in the city that nearly became his grave. He was eventually recognized as a Niju Hibakusha, a twice-bombed survivor. In his 80s, he broke his silence, deciding that his history carried a specific global responsibility. He traveled to the United Nations. He used his own physical record of survival to advocate for nuclear disarmament, transforming his private trauma into a public warning. He concluded that he had been spared to serve as a witness. He used the decades of life he was granted to speak for those who were silenced in 1945. While physics and geography saved his body from the blasts, Tsutomu Yamaguchi spent the next 65 years deciding what that survival meant. He died at 93, outlasting the era that tried to erase him, and ensuring his message of peace would remain.